The message came just as he adjusted his tie for the third time. "Sorry, something came up. I can't make it tonight." For a moment the world around him kept moving, waiters gliding between tables, glasses clinking, soft piano music filling the air. But inside him everything fell silent. Ethan Blake, the youngest senior partner at his investment firm, stared at the glowing screen of his phone as if it might change its mind. It didn't. The restaurant he had reserved 2 weeks ago suddenly felt too big, too bright, too aware of him sitting alone at a table meant for two. He forced a small smile when the waiter approached, pretending he was waiting, pretending he wasn't used to this feeling, pretending he hadn't secretly hoped tonight would be different. Ethan had built his life on discipline and control. He came from nothing, raised in a small apartment by a single father who worked 2 jobs after Ethan's mother passed away. He learned early that love could disappear and that money, unlike people, stayed if you worked hard enough. So he worked. He rose. He achieved. He became the man others admired from a distance. But admiration had a cold edge to it. Across the restaurant, laughter erupted from a group celebrating a birthday. A couple leaned toward each other, whispering secrets only they understood. Ethan felt the familiar ache of being successful but somehow unfinished. He reached for his wallet, ready to pay for a meal he hadn't yet ordered when he noticed them. A little boy stood near the entrance, his sneakers worn thin, his eyes locked onto a tray of food passing by. His stomach growled loudly enough that even Ethan could hear it from across the room. Behind him stood a woman, mid-30s, maybe, her shoulders slumped from exhaustion, her coat too light for the winter air that slipped in each time the door opened. She was speaking softly to the hostess, her expression a mix of embarrassment and determination. Ethan couldn't hear the words, but he recognized the look. It was the look of someone trying to stay strong when the world kept pushing back. The hostess shook her head apologetically. The boy's eyes dimmed. Ethan felt something twist inside him. He didn't think, he just stood up and walked over. Up close, he saw how tired the woman truly was. Dark circles framed her eyes. A hospital ID badge hung from her bag, clipped carelessly as if she had forgotten to remove it after a long shift. The boy's small hand gripped her coat sleeve, trusting her completely despite the uncertainty in her gaze. Ethan cleared his throat gently. He told them he had a reservation for two and that his date wouldn't be joining him. He said it would be a shame to waste the table. He tried to sound casual, as if this kind of invitation was something he offered strangers every night. The woman hesitated. Pride and desperation battled silently across her face, but when her son looked up at her with quiet hope, she nodded. They followed him to the table. At first, the conversation was careful and polite. Her name was Maria. She worked double shifts as a nurse at the local hospital. Her son, Lucas, was 8 and loved science and space, and anything that made him ask questions bigger than the room could hold. Their car had broken down earlier that evening after Maria picked him up from a school event. They had walked 3 blocks in the cold before Lucas admitted he was hungry. The restaurant had been the nearest place, with warm light pouring from its windows. Ethan listened more than he spoke, and as he listened, something inside him began to soften. Lucas devoured his meal with pure joy, pausing only to thank the waiter each time his glass was refilled. Maria ate slowly, almost apologetically, as if she felt guilty for accepting kindness. Ethan realized he had never seen gratitude look so honest. For years he had measured his worth in numbers, salary figures, stock gains, square footage of his apartment. But sitting there, watching a child light up over a simple plate of pasta, he felt a kind of fullness no promotion had ever given him. Maria shared pieces of her life cautiously. She had left an unhealthy marriage 2 years ago. Since then, it had been just her and Lucas against everything. Some months were harder than others. She didn't complain. She simply stated facts, the way people do when they've grown used to carrying more than they should. Ethan thought of his own father, of the nights he'd pretended not to hear him crying behind the bedroom door after another exhausting shift. He remembered promising himself that one day he would make life easier. He had done that for himself, but somewhere along the way, he had forgotten what the promise was really about. As dessert arrived, a slice of chocolate cake Lucas had shyly pointed at but insisted he didn't need, Ethan felt the night shifting in a way he hadn't expected. The canceled date no longer felt like rejection. It felt like redirection. When the check came, Maria reached for her purse, but Ethan gently stopped her. He told her it was already taken care of. She protested once, then thanked him in a way that made his chest tighten. Outside, the cold had deepened. Maria mentioned calling a cab, though Ethan could see the worry behind her calm tone. Without overthinking it, he offered them a ride. His car was warm, quiet, expensive in a way that once made him proud. Tonight, it felt like a tool instead of a trophy. During the drive, Lucas asked Ethan what he did for work. Ethan explained finance in the simplest terms he could. Lucas listened intently, then declared he wanted to be a scientist who helped people travel to Mars. Maria smiled, tired but radiant. When they reached their small apartment building, Ethan stepped out to open the door for them. He looked at the building's worn bricks, the flickering hallway light visible through the entrance. It wasn't much, but it was home. Lucas surprised him by giving him a quick, tight hug before running inside. Maria lingered for a moment. She thanked him again, but this time there was something else in her eyes, respect maybe, or recognition. Ethan drove home feeling different. The silence in his penthouse apartment no longer felt peaceful. It felt empty. He walked past framed awards and expensive art pieces and saw them for what they were, proof of achievement, not proof of impact. That night he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Maria's exhaustion, about Lucas's hunger, about how close they had been to walking away unseen. He thought about how many other people were just one unexpected bill or one broken car away from falling apart. The next morning, instead of heading straight to the office, Ethan did something impulsive. He visited the hospital listed on Maria's badge. He asked about volunteer programs, about community outreach initiatives, about funding gaps. He discovered that the hospital's pediatric wing was under-resourced. Families struggled quietly every day. For the first time in years, he felt his ambition redirect itself. Over the next few weeks, Ethan began investing not just in markets, but in people. He established a foundation supporting single parents facing medical and financial hardship. He funded meal programs, emergency transportation services, and scholarships for children with big dreams and limited means. He didn't do it for publicity. In fact, he avoided interviews. He did it because every time he pictured Lucas's grateful smile, he felt something align inside him. He kept in touch with Maria, slowly, respectfully. What started as a thank you message turned into occasional coffee meetings. He learned that she laughed easily when she wasn't exhausted, that she loved old movies, that she had once dreamed of becoming a doctor but sacrificed that dream when life demanded practicality. Ethan found himself opening up too. He spoke about his mother's death, about the fear of losing people, about building walls so high that no one could climb them. Maria didn't judge him, she understood. Months passed, the foundation grew, so did Ethan. He began leaving the office earlier. He attended one of Lucas's school science fairs, standing in a crowded gymnasium among parents who looked far more qualified for the role. When Lucas won second place for his homemade volcano experiment, he looked straight at Ethan in the crowd, his grin brighter than any trophy. Ethan realized something simple but profound. Success feels different when someone is excited to see you walk into a room. The night his blind date canceled had once felt like confirmation that he was destined to eat alone at beautifully set tables. Now he saw it as the night his life quietly rerouted toward meaning. Love didn't arrive dramatically. It grew in shared glances, in late-night conversations, in small acts of showing up. It grew in the way Maria trusted him with her fears, and in the way Lucas started calling him whenever he needed help with homework. Ethan, the man who once believed money was the safest investment, discovered that vulnerability was braver. That giving didn't reduce him, it expanded him. A year later, he returned to the same restaurant, not to relive rejection but to celebrate. Lucas insisted on wearing a tiny suit. Maria looked less tired, her eyes lighter. Ethan no longer adjusted his tie nervously. He didn't need to impress anyone. He had already found what mattered. As they sat together, laughing over dessert, Ethan thought about how close he had come to missing this life. If his date hadn't canceled, he might have spent that night making small talk, then returning to emptiness. Instead, a hungry child and his exhausted mother had changed everything. Sometimes the worst moments carry hidden invitations. Sometimes rejection protects you from a smaller story. And sometimes, the life you're meant to live begins on the night you thought everything fell apart. If you're listening to this and you feel alone at your own table tonight, if plans have fallen through, if someone walked away, if life hasn't unfolded the way you hoped, remember this: your canceled plans might be clearing space for something greater. Stay open. Stay kind. The smallest act of compassion could transform not just someone else's night, but your entire future. Because in the end, success isn't about who sits across from you at a reservation made weeks ago. It's about who walks into your life unexpectedly and teaches you how to truly live. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There are more stories waiting to remind you that hope often arrives disguised as disappointment, and that one small choice can change everything.